Hello, listeners, and welcome back to Echoes from the Road, a podcast about music, moments, and everything in between from the first note to the lot after. My name is Annabella.
Hey guys, I'm Chris from Colorado. Good to be here again. It feels like it's been a hot minute since we were here last episode talking with Chris O'Leary. He had a pretty amazing story talking about how he came back from college and hooked up with his brother, and they rebuilt the Fox Theater together and turned it into one of the hottest music venues in Boulder. So it was really amazing being with Chris. You know, as we do these podcasts, one of the things I really love about music is it's so much more than the sound. It is about community. It's about identity and especially in the Dead community, a way of life. I mean, my guest today spent decades chasing that feeling. He discovered jazz through his dad's record collection, finding home in the music of the Grateful Dead, Little Feat, Fish, so much more than just those, but those are just a few. For him, live music isn't just something you watch, it's something you really participate in and become a part of. So today we're going to talk with Mike Crowe about how that connection shaped who he is today. So I'm really excited to have you on, Mike. I'm looking forward to hearing your story. So welcome.
Thank you, Chris, Annabella. Yeah,
Welcome. It's nice to meet
so
you.
it has been a long, strange trip. That's more than just a saying on a t-shirt.
hmm
Yeah. Nice.
Like Chris mentioned, I am forever grateful for the fact that my dad was such a just eclectic music collector. Everything from, the Miles Davis jazz genre, the more classical jazz like that, and then even he introduced me to a band not many people know about, Jeff Lorber Fusion, which was just probably one of the earlier fusion jazz type bands that really introduced me to what improvisational music could be like. I mean, jazz has always been improvisational, but Jeff Lorber and bands like that really, really took it to another level. And then my grandfather was a musician, played in a band that only played for square dances. That seems an odd thing, but
Interesting.
what they did.
Yeah.
They would play the music, and then they call them a caller, the person that would give the instructions about, swing your partner and do this and that. And so they had very much a love for country and bluegrass. And so I grew up in that. And so that was my first love, I guess, was bluegrass music. And that's obviously leads to Jerry. He
Mhm.
was a cornerstone in my mind, maybe not Bill Monroe, but certainly in that second row of musicians that came through and sort of brought a different approach to bluegrass. Again, even a more songs that were typically a 5-minute song all of a sudden became an 8-minute or a 10-minute or, jam as you will kind of thing.
Right.
And as a musician, I always felt like there was greater potential for any music. When you encourage and you allow musicians to kind of just go off and do whatever they want to do, stay in key, stay in time, but go nuts, right? That's how the Grateful Dead became what they became, because people saw them doing something that really no one had done before like that.
Yeah.
And as Chris alluded to in her introduction, I think the thing that really appealed to me about that kind of music, I'm a Deadhead, but I'll say I have Deadhead friends who that's all they do. That's all they listen to. There's nothing wrong with that. That sounded
Mhm.
critical. I didn't mean critical. There, that's lovely. If you can get by the rest of your life listening to nothing but the Grateful Dead, you're in a better place than you would be without it. But again, I think the influence of my dad and my granddad and other people that I've been around, there's all this music coming out that represents the same sort of thing. And when I say same sort of thing, music that's more than just a band and an audience. There's a different connection that goes on. When you went to a Grateful Dead show, your reason for being there started in the parking lot before, or at the campgrounds before you ever got to the parking lot. My point being just that your reason for being there far preceded just showing up and watching the band play. And
hmm
for the band, that community, that absolute collaboration with the music amongst I don't even like to call it an audience because yes, in truth, you are an audience. But for me, the reality was these were people that I would travel to spend time with, just like you would with family and friends. So that's the sort of dynamic I think that really changed the way I looked at music as a teenager. And then later in life, that carried over into, oh gosh, widespread panic. Man, listen to Fish. And then later, oh gosh, listen to pigeons playing ping pong or goose, or there's just so much music out there made by bands. I could go on all night. Humphreys, McGee, Moe, Galactic, blah, 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 yada, yada. I could, yeah, but avoiding the running commentary. Just there's all these bands that have come out that have that spirit. They want that community. They want people to show up 2, 3 hours before the show's even scheduled or more, and show up and hang out with your friends, hang out with people you never met before, there's a lot of bands out there now that their approach to their music, their approach to the people that listen to their music, it's very much like what the Grateful Dead spearheaded in their day.
Mhm.
So, yeah, that's what did it for me was July 8th of 1978, Red Rocks, and now that's like a famous show, right? It's out on different releases. I think there's even a Dick's pick for that date. But it was very much about the community. It was about, some guy in a Chevy van with compressors outside the van, and he's in doing 20, 30-minute tattoos like that one.
Nice.
Nice.
So, as a young teen, relatively 16, and it was my first. I had seen a few concerts before, but anybody listening to this probably is going, "Well, duh." But yeah, it was absolutely life-changing because I didn't realize that it wasn't just the music. The music was certainly a big part of it, but the music wouldn't be what the music is if it wasn't inspired by the people that are the Deadheads. And I can't quote when or where, but I know at least one time I heard Jerry talk about that dynamic and how on stage, and again, I hate to quote without being able to cite where it came from, but one of those old videos of somebody interviewing Jerry, and he just said something about, I can be having, and again, this is paraphrase, I can be having one of my worst shows and they love that, just to say something that simple, that
Yeah.
really illustrates what the whole band felt about the people that were there to see them. It
Mhm.
wasn't just, "Yeah, we packed Madison Square Garden." Okay, well,
Right.
that's groovy, but okay, and you made millions of dollars or whatever, but you get my point. It's just
Yeah.
it is different, and it's appreciated as a fan, as a Deadhead or Goose or Fish or fill in the blank. I mean, there's so many just amazing bands out there to be enjoyed, and I'm feel very fortunate that in my life, not only have I been able to adopt that eclectic, I'm gonna use that word, eclectic taste in music, but and she's not here to hear this, but I married a woman who is exactly the same way. She just loves everything musical and live music and going out of your way to go be part of something that, yes, is sort of anchored in that you're there to see music, but it is more than that. You're there to hang out with people that maybe you've never seen before, or maybe people we've been hanging out with at concerts for decades.
No, absolutely. I That's such a beautiful way of putting it, and it's fun. It is honestly, it's hard to describe to people who haven't experienced that community, but it is such like a warm and fuzzy feeling when you get to show up a couple hours before a concert and hang out with strangers, or even like when I'm driving down the street and I see somebody else has got like a Dead sticker on the back of their car, it just puts a smile on my face, and it's little things here and there where it's like, this is part of my, extended family. And my Aunt Kristen has just told me so much about the Dead community in Colorado specifically. And it sounds like you guys have something like so amazing there, where you're just so interconnected. And yeah, it is. It's quite special.
Yeah, over the years, I've seen somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 shows. At one time, I had all the ticket stubs and the envelopes for the mail order and all that kind of thing. But it's not, even though I think there's a population of deadheads who kind of look at this thing as a competition. And I've mentioned this to Chris in the past before. That always kind of bugged me a little bit. Like, yeah, I've been to a lot of shows, But that doesn't mean I'm more of a dead like, there's this thing on Facebook right now that just is a thorn for me, but "Did you ever see Jerry?" Well, yeah, and there are a lot of people here who haven't seen Jerry, who didn't get to see him, unfortunately, but they're every bit as dedicated a Deadhead as anybody else in the room, whether they ever saw Jerry or not.
Mhm.
Did you ever, you know yeah, I just never cared for that sort of one-upping of a Deadhead.
Yeah.
That's not kind of falls out of the spirit of the thing, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I
Well,
agree.
and think about like Young and Dead. I mean, who gives a shit if they never saw Jerry? They are amazing musicians.
Yeah, they are.
You know, they are bringing out, they're keeping Jerry alive. Like, yeah, I agree with you. And it's funny. My boyfriend Billy, he gets so into it when he sees younger kids like listening to Dead music, and he's just so into it. Yeah, I agree with you, Mike, for sure. So that July 8th show, any interesting experiences for you when you were there? Did you meet anybody cool? Like, does anything stand out from that day? I guess. That's my question.
That was Dave Block Day, right? Getting old is a
Yeah.
yeah, it was for sure. Yeah. So, yeah, I met one friend there who I remained friends with for, well, till today. So, all these years we remain friends. Now, he doesn't live around here anymore. But he and his wife moved to Manteca, California. Not real sure. I know that's somewhere kind of up north, but not sure exactly where. But yeah, and that was one of those wandering around the parking lot before the show started looking for a T-shirt or something. And here's this guy that was obviously in his mid-20s or so at the time, much older, 10 years older than me or so, sitting there with his wife and walking around. And they asked me if I wanted a wrap. They were making what do they call that stuff? The egg mixture, real thin crepes. They were making
Yeah.
crepes
Grapes.
with
Yum.
turkey and cheese or whatever in them. I was like, sure. And so they made one and gave it to me, and I'm getting my money out to give them money for the. No, no, no. We don't take money for any of this stuff. It's like when you get that
So
kind of an
nice.
introduction to a group of people, that really sticks with you.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah, like you said, the parking lot is a very important part of it.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
for
followed
sure.
them to California, actually. This is a number of years later when they moved out there. I went out there and spent a couple of weeks with them, and one of the opportunities that came up while I was out there is that the Dead was actually playing at Shoreline, and I got to go see a one-night show there that, again, every band goes through this. If you're a band and you're not evolving and changing, you're probably not a band anymore. That's just kind of the way that music works. And
Mhm.
so in '78, of course, the songs they played and the way they played was pretty remarkably different than 10 years later in California with, that this was immediately after Touch of Grey came out. And of course, the, uh, the probably I think you could argue that may have been that album was probably the most commercially Shakedown was up there, I suppose, studio releases, but yeah, so it was just a different way of approaching the music. They're a band, they're musicians, they're evolving, and that would have been just shortly after Jerry had to teach himself to play guitar again as well. So yeah, it was a great experience to get to go there with them and be with people that knew the area and knew a lot of the local deadheads there and took me to parties afterward and that kind of thing. So yeah, just
Nice.
expanding on the idea that it's something much more than just going to see a band.
Mhm.
Would you say you did mention that you were a big bluegrass fan. What is your go-to for bluegrass?
Tony Rice, because I'm a guitar
Tony Rice.
player. You can't be a guitar player and not love no matter what kind of music you're into. If you're a guitar player, you know who Tony Rice is. His lines, his licks are just unlike anyone else. Today's thing is Billy Strings, and the guy is
Yeah.
mind blowing. But I've heard people sort of compare and actually make statements about how, Billy Strings is a better musician than Tony Rice, or Eric Clapton is better than this guy, or any of that kind of discussion. Again, my humble opinion, I think those are silly conversations because there are 1,000 different kinds of guitar players out there and they are all better than me. So Yeah, it's hard to be critical toward one or overly,
Yeah.
praise of someone else. I remember one time somebody was talking to Bobby about guitar players and who was his favorite, who was his guitar player that he emulated the most. And he has probably been asked that question 100,000 times. But this particular time, he kind of blew me away when he said Wes Montgomery. If you don't know who that is, please look him up. Jazz genius and generally just a guitar phenom. Yeah. And so there's no, what's the point I was trying to get to? There is no best. Like, Rolling Stone has the 10 best guitar players
Hmm.
every year, or maybe they do 100, whatever it is. Whoever's in that number one spot, I would not want to be that person because now you're being measured against everything. So you got
Right.
the best of everything. Who can do that? No one.
Right. Yeah.
So
No, it's good. They're all, I mean, yeah, I love that. Like, there's a lot of great guitar players out there, but they're all their own. They're all different in their own way, and they all bring something different. So,
Well, especially in the realm of like jazz and bluegrass and like jam bands, every guitarist really is bringing their own thing to the table because you're not going to play the same song twice in a row. So it's so hard to judge one against the other because they're not reading the same music. They're adding their own style and their own flair to it. So how could you compare them?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I actually, on that note, I think it's so interesting that you have a somewhat jazzy background. So I was in jazz bands for most of middle school and high school. I played the trumpet. And so I think there is such an interesting appreciation for somebody's ability to improvise because there's like that creative freedom, but also the structure to be able to understand what key you have to play in and staying on beat and working with your teammates up on stage and communicating with them. And there's so many elements that go into it. I think people do recognize, but if you've been in a situation like that or you really understand what goes into it, you kind of see beyond that layer and you're like that is a professional up there. Like that is some crazy stuff they're doing because it's a lot of work. And especially, I just get put in such a trance watching like a jam band work the way they use little like eye movements or a sign to signal one another and they work in a complete unison. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it happened more than a handful of times that and I always thought the relationship between Jerry and Bobby was at times a little tenuous. I mean, I've been to a fair number of shows that had moments that didn't go very well, or frankly, entire shows that kind of, forgetting words to songs and
Hmm.
kind of losing tempo, things like that. But some of those instances, like you're pointing out, where one musician looks at the other with that look like, what? Alligator, we never even discussed alligator or what, you know, whatever it might be. But yeah, that playing music in a group is always difficult. I struggle with it. I like to when I do. It's always fun, but boy, I have an undying love for those people that are able to just walk into a group of people knowing theory well and all of that obviously helps. But even if you do know all of that, walking into a circle of people that you're not familiar with or a circle of people you only see now and again, and just being able to sit down and it just happens, it's just absolutely magic sometimes.
It is, yeah.
have you ever played anything other than guitar, or has guitar been always your go-to?
No, actually, my granddad started me on mandolin.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. And
Wow.
unfortunately, I injured my left hand pretty severely helping a friend of mine in a sheet metal shop, and it was bad. So
Goodness.
the biggest difference between those two instruments is, of course, you've got a much smaller fret to work on, and almost all chords on a mandolin, except for a handful, but almost all four fingers are engaged
Wow.
in every chord. So when you don't have all four to work with, and for a while I wasn't able to play at all, but then when I did start playing again, the fingers just don't do what they used to do. So then I figured, well, I'll just pick up a guitar. And, you hear the jokes from people about, well, I picked up the guitar so I could get the girls, right? Yeah, that doesn't always work. But yeah, that's why I ended up picking up a guitar at 16, 17, something like that.
Nice.
Yeah.
It's
So you
awesome.
might you might have touched on this a bit, but you mentioned like your dad's influence on like musically had a lot of influence on you. How did the name Grateful Dead, like, come across your desk, I guess, as a teenager? Was it like your friends were going to a show and you got roped in and you were hooked, or was it something your dad
No,
played for you?
it was actually because of Jerry. It was just kind of a natural
Okay.
evolution of first somebody turned me on to Jerry and the stuff
Mhm.
he was doing with Old and in the Way and the stuff he was doing even then with John Conn and boy, I hate that. I knew I
It
should.
just went out of your head.
Anyway, the early stuff that he was doing, bluegrass, and then I just started looking into it. It's like, well, wow, who is this guy? And yeah, and then I had friends that then once I started showing an interest, we were all kind of the same age. And they were all, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So let's take the bus. Back then, excuse me, there used to be a biodiesel bus that ran from Boulder to Red Rocks, and it was like probably a 60 passenger, I would guess. I think most of those larger school buses are in that neighborhood. So the school bus would run Boulder to Red Rocks before the show, and then, of course, Red Rocks back to Boulder. And that's how we got to Red Rocks for that 78 show. We got there a little sneaky, I suppose, as far as not telling the parents and that kind of thing. But when Mary is home, hold on one second. Okay, so anyway, she was surprised because I was gonna do this at another computer. There's no shortage of those in this house, but ended up
Ugh.
using anyway, yeah. So, yeah, that was a very interesting time of, you know, everybody at some point in their life, you kind of find your freedom, and, I guess that was it for me, was, I'd been like I say, I'd been to some other concerts, mostly bluegrass and of course, going to see square dances is always one of my favorite things just because as a kid, they would dress me up for these square dances, cowboy boots and a hat, and
That's so
dance around
fun.
on the stage and stuff like that while the band was playing. But yeah, that first show at Red Rocks was definitely a defining moment for me as far as individual independence, kind of stepping out a little bit and knowing that when I got home, especially toward the end of the evening, that there was probably no chance at all that I was going to walk in the house and not immediately have it be recognized that, my gosh, you smell like a, you, you smell like you were at a concert. And what is that big patch on your arm kind of thing? So
Right, from your
from the
tattoo,
tattoo,
right?
and so that was but then, yeah, it sets you on a path because you kind of want to determine your own independence. You're finding your own way.
Mhm.
And I'm sure there are those that would argue that maybe that's not the best environment to find your independence. But for me, it was. It never was a negative thing. Like, you know what I mean? People get into the party scene and excess leads to bad things happening sometimes. And I guess I'm just grateful that that didn't happen for me. I didn't run into any of those situations where anything real bad happened or anything like that. But
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
always good. That's
yeah.
always good. So any shows in your future that you're really excited about that are coming up?
Yes, actually, there's going to be a really fun one. You mentioned Young and Dead on July 11th, which just happens to correlate with Chris's birthday.
Yes, that will be fun.
Yeah, that's going to be a blast. So,
Yep. Yep, they're
and
playing at Whibby.
then we're headed the first or second week of August. We're headed to Wyoming for the Tarhee Festival, which is Tarhee is in Alta, Wyoming, right at the corner of Wyoming and Utah and Montana. You're about the same distance into Utah as you are to go into Montana. And that festival started out as a more traditional, kind of like what has happened with Telluride, where it started out as a truly bluegrass, traditional bluegrass festival. And within just a few years, all of a sudden, they had all these major headliners coming into play. Nothing wrong with that at all. But if you are spending a lot of money, especially to go to a bluegrass festival, you kind of want it to be a bluegrass festival.
Yeah.
And where I've seen some absolutely amazing shows at Telluride from Bonnie Raitt, Johnny Cash, a lot of great musicians, Bare Naked Ladies. They bring in all these headliners to bring in more people that a traditional bluegrass only show might not bring in. Yeah, it just, $1,000 a night for lodging. And it just got to the point where it just
Yeah.
wasn't feasible, where we have a smaller one here in Lyons, Colorado called Rocky Grass, plug for Rocky Grass and the Bluegrass Mafia in Lyons, Colorado, that has remained absolutely bluegrass. Every band is traditional bluegrass. They don't, Sam Bush and his band close out every Saturday night every year and that kind of thing. So you get to, we've gotten to see bands there that have become decades of going to see them. Hot Rise and their alter egos, Red Nichols and the Trailblazers. They're there frequently, that kind of thing. But anyway, so Tarhee was the same sort of thing as Telluride, where pretty soon they just dropped the bluegrass out of the name at all. I think now it's just called the Grand Tarhee Music Festival.
That'll be
Nice.
fun. And then we're going to see Trombone Shorty. Is
Yeah,
that August or September? It's August, right?
I think that's in August. Yeah,
Yeah, I feel like it's in August too.
yeah.
So remind me again how you guys got connected.
At
Do you want to
work.
say it? Yeah.
Yeah,
So when I started in 2011 at Regroup and worked with Mike
Nice.
for what, 9 years?
yeah,
I was there 9 years.
yeah. I
So
was here right at 12 years total, and yeah, meeting you and yeah, it was a really nice place to work. A lot of people there. Do you remember a guy named Drew Bloom?
Brew Bloom.
Yeah, he introduced me to. I only bring him up because he sat right behind me in the development area, and he turned me on to several bands,
Nice.
including Lettuce and
Yeah.
just a bunch of different bands. He'd have his little speaker on his desk, listening to some. It's like, dude, what is that?
I saw Lettuce for the first time in New Orleans. My brother got tickets and we went to that show in the evening. And oh my God, I was blown away. It was such a good show, such a good show. And I was so excited because, you and my brother are the two people that I know that know the most about music. And for years, I've wanted you two to meet. And then Mike and Jeff finally met
Nice.
at before we went to the Trey show. They
Nice.
got to meet. We met in Denver, yeah. So that was so cool. I hope we can all hang out again like that, you
Yeah,
know?
that was fun.
Yeah. It was a
And
lot
you're
of
right.
fun.
I got to say, in just the little bit of conversations I had with him there at that show, he's definitely substantially more knowledgeable about music than I am, just because he's had opportunities to be so many different and other places that I haven't had the opportunity to do. But
Now see, I don't know. I don't know because if I asked him a bluegrass question, my guess is he wouldn't know,
yeah, maybe.
you know? But he has such a wide range of music. Like him and Deanne decided they just wanted to go and see some of the Tears for Fears tour. So big into 80s music. He loves X. He just loves all these, different genres of music. But you would hands down beat him in a question and answer about definitely blues and bluegrass, I
Yeah.
think.
Annabella mentioned earlier about playing horns, and my sort of reply to anything that has to do with adding horns to a band is that no band doesn't sound better with a horn section.
Mm.
Yeah. No, it's always fun. It's just a fun element, and I think I don't know, just from playing as a kid and growing up, and my sister played the saxophone, so I don't know, I do have such an appreciation for that sound and that noise, and I did some classical stuff, and then the jazz stuff is just fun, and you get to be loud, and you get to have a good time with it, and you could tell when somebody's just, like, so talented, they stand up to, like, improvise a solo, and they just, like, close their eyes and get into it, and I'm like, I just know that feels fantastic right now, like, it's cool.
For sure. For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a very physical involvement in music. I'll speak for myself. There is. I used to like at Grateful Dead shows. This is going to sound so weird, but I always liked being kind of over on whatever would have been the left side of the stage. And I don't know if this was real or I just thought it one time, so it became the thing that I did. But I wanted to be as close to that left side stack as I could get. And I felt like I got more of Phil by doing that. And I loved that bass when it hit hard. You could just feel it go right through you.
Mhm.
I don't know if when it comes to sound engineering, if that holds any water or not, but yeah, just something I started doing and stayed with.
Well, I've always been on the Jerry side. I've always been on the right side,
Yeah.
kind of in the corner a little bit. But yeah.
Yeah, that seemed to happen. There was always the Jerry heads that felt like he was the master and keeper of the band, and then, the people that were just crazy about Bobby and couldn't get enough of those short shorts and polos.
Oh my god, I know. Were they like OP shorts or
Yeah,
I
Ocean
know he
Pacific shorts and
used to wear like
Izod
yeah, Eyeside shirt, yeah.
polos,
That's so
yeah.
funny. That's so funny. Wow. Yeah, good times. Good times.
I do. I have such an appreciation for Bobby, just especially because I never obviously saw Jerry. I got to see Dead and Company a handful of times, and so getting to see like Bobby up there do his thing just always felt so special. And yeah, even now, like going back and listening to older songs, I do. I have a special place for Bobby in my heart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. The respect is immense because here's a guy who lost his very best friend.
Hmm.
They were brothers in the most real way. I mean, Bobby wouldn't have been there without Jerry.
Yeah.
That was happenstance, but it might have happened either way, but, chances are he was there because of Jerry, and this when we lost Jerry, that was really a really difficult time. It wasn't I don't think we've lost any other musician. There's some real close, but none like that.
Hmm.
None that actually felt so personal. Never met the man in my life, and yet there were weeks. It was probably after Christmas that year before I would, sit down and listen, because every time I would sit down, especially anything JGB, would just
Yeah, Jerry bands, that's tough.
so emotional, it wasn't really fun, I guess.
Yeah.
But to put myself in Bobby's shoes, that he had to be devastated, and yet he knew that Jerry would want the music to go on. He knew that there was something still to share with the world of
Hmm.
the Grateful Dead music, and it didn't matter who you put him on stage with. He made it, whether it was John Mayer, the Wolf Brothers Ensemble, it just doesn't matter. The guy, that's what he learned from Jerry. That's what he learned from being in the Grateful Dead was, like I was saying earlier, about people that can walk into a room and just start jamming no matter where it is. They know it's just in their brain and in their heart both. But yeah, that was as difficult as losing Jerry was for me as a Deadhead and for many, many people. If you do think about it that way, if you put yourself in Bobby's shoes or Mickey's or Bill, any of those guys,
Yeah.
they all had to have some real heart to heart with themselves about, okay, now what? And, Phil
Mm,
did his thing. Everybody, that's the thing. I guess what I was trying to get to was just that none of them, they all could have packed it in. It's not like
Hmm.
they needed the money or anything. So they
right.
could have packed it in. They could have just said, all right, now's as good a time as any. But versus doing that, they knew that there was much more to share and, Phil and Friends and all the other entities that
Rat dog further.
people. Yeah.
Yeah,
The stuff Mickey Hart has done.
yeah.
y- you
Yeah,
know,
and they're also selfless as well, and that's I always think that especially with Bobby and watching him as well and watching old videos of him playing with Jerry too, because, he never like necessarily stole the show, but he was such a driving force behind the sound and you don't realize that at first. Yeah, I got to sit there and like watch him and watch how they all interact to kind of like realize that. But even playing with John Mayer and playing with Dead and Co, like I mean obviously he's up front and he holds a big spotlight, but I feel like he never put himself in the center of attention. He always kind of wanted to highlight everybody else, and he did such a good job at it. And I just really admired that about him. He's like such a humble but extremely talented person.
yeah.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the whole
Wow.
John Mayer thing, I know that maybe if you're of the purest mind, and I don't buy into that. John Mayer, he's one of the most talented musicians to come out in decades and decades. The guy can play anything you put in front of him. But more than that, the fact that he took the time to put off going into the studio to do another album and instead spend, I forget how long, some period of time traveling to all these places that he had wanted to go, and he just spent that whole time doing nothing but going from place to traveling places he wanted to go anyway. but he spent that whole time working on Jerry,
Mhm.
learning the catalog, learning, watching videos and learning the mannerisms and the whole he just invested himself in it so entirely. But he's always said, I wasn't trying to replace Jerry. I could never do that, but I was going to do as good a job as I could to fill those shoes, to fill
Mhm.
that place on stage. And boy, he nails it every single time. And I think
Yeah.
if that becomes the next thing and John Mayer is the front of it and we have to suffer through all the crew that he might bring along, I'll be there.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Jeff Chimente and all those, they're all okay, right?
Yeah, right. They're all right.
Yeah, no, and you know what? To me, that it comes back to the community that we were talking about at the beginning of where, you build a family around this music and everybody just feels so deeply connected to it. And so you take unicorns like John Mayer or Billy Strings or anybody who's played with them, and they feel so honored to play with them. So it's like they're both a fan and they have this appreciation, but then they also have the talent to kind of back it up and get up there. And it's such a beautiful thing watching that come together.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
It really is. I loved it when Trey played with them
Yeah.
in California. My God, I cried. It was just Trey had the biggest smile on his face when Bobby was standing across from him and John was right next to him. I was taking pictures of the TV. I was like, "Oh my God, that's such an amazing moment." So good.
Yep.
So, Belle, do you want to wrap us up?
Yeah, so let's do we do a segment every time we record an episode, and basically everybody just brings a song they've been listening to. What's at the top of your mind, what's been on repeat, or it doesn't even have to be on repeat, what's just a song you want to share with the group today.
Mike, do you wanna go first, or I can
You want
go
to do
and you
some
can think
thinking?
about it?
The one I'm going to bring up is nothing at all to do with the Grateful Dead, and it's someone that I never had the privilege of seeing live, but we have a dog named Otis. It's
Mhm.
the cutest dog on the planet, in my opinion. But anyway, he is named after, in part, Otis Redding, and so that's what's been on my list is my playlist, 90 some odd songs by Otis Redding, but the one song that really is close to home right now is called Respect. And being a black artist in the environment that he was and being so different than everything else, my, again, humble opinion, he was soul before anybody else was even calling it that.
Mhm.
He was a true soul artist. And that song just really speaks to the struggle that a lot of people have with gaining respect from anyone, but especially those that you want it from the most. You want the people that are in charge of your career, in charge of your life, in charge of who you're going to play music with, in his case. And it just hits home for me because right now, and we're not going to go down the road of politics at all, but just to recognize the reality of the time we're in. There are a lot of people out there right now that would just like to have a measure of respect, a measure of consideration, and we should all be willing to give that to one another.
Absolutely.
Amen. Amen. How about you, Belle?
For me, it also kind of takes a different. It's not super on the Grateful Dead track, but the song "Cherry Colored Funk" by Cocteau Twins. That song just scratches an itch in my brain, and every now and then it comes up in my playlist, and it's so good. So
Okay, I have to listen to that. I've never heard of that before.
it's very good.
Cocktail Twins, Cherry
Co-
Colored Funk.
Cocteau. So it's
Del.
Cocteau.
Okay.
Yeah, it's funky, but no, it's a really, really great song. So yeah, totally recommend you guys both listening to it if you haven't already.
Okay, I'll have to check that out.
Mhm.
Mine is Bonnie Raitt. Well, originally John Prine, Angel from Montgomery, but the Bonnie Raitt version, I'm learning that on guitar and I'm learning how to sing it. And then I'm hoping to get it recorded at John's recording studio and be able to play it maybe at the beginning of the podcast.
Nice.
Nice.
Another
Yeah.
one. Yeah.
The
But I
version that
love
I'm sorry.
Bonnie Raitt, the version the Bonnie Raitt. I'm not gonna do John Prine. I
There's
can't
a
do John
there's
Prine.
a Bonnie Raitt version, Bonnie Raitt's live version of that song where it's the two of them.
Wow.
God. Oh my
Yeah,
God,
I'll
I
make
would
sure you get
cry.
that.
I would cry.
Yeah,
But I just love her voice, and it's such an easy song on the guitar, it's a really easy song. In fact, next time we get together to jam, Mike, we should play it.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah,
awesome. Have you talked to my mom about that at all? Because she's been singing that around the house.
No, I have not talked to your mom in months, so you
You
have
gotta
to
shoot
tell her.
Yeah, or shoot her a text. Say, "Guess what I've been learning."
Yeah,
Because you
that's
guys are both
funny.
doing that right now. Yeah.
That's really funny.
Yeah.
Wow. Awesome. Well, hey, Mike, thank you so much for coming on and, talking about your dad and how music started for you. And yeah, that amazing show in July at Red Rocks and yeah, just all your knowledge around music. It's been really great having you on.
yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, it was so
Yeah.
great meeting you, and it's always fun to pick somebody's brain about, getting into the nitty-gritty about how this stuff works, so it was fun.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Awesome. All right. Well, yeah, that's a wrap. Thanks everyone for joining. Again, Annabella will be doing the editing and then we'll get it out on Spotify and YouTube and update our Facebook site. So thanks again for tuning in and we'll catch you later.
Thanks a
Awesome.
lot.